Good evening to all. In today's session, we are going to discuss about the data link layer. Data link layer is the second lowermost layer which is placed above the physical layer. The data link layer is responsible for transmitting the data from source to the destination. As we have discussed earlier, the data will be transmitted from the top to bottom at the sender side and bottom to top at the receiver end. So the data link layer, the main functionality of the data link layer is at the sender side, it receives the data from the network layer in the form of packets and converting the packet into the frames and transmit the frames into the physical layer. At the receiver side, the data link layer receives the data in the form of raw bits from the physical layer and transmit the raw bits into the form of frames, then pass the frames into the network layer. So what are the main functionalities of data link layer? The main functionalities are framing, physical addressing, flow control, error control, and then access control. Let us discuss about each and every functionality in a detailed way. So the first responsibility of the data link layer is framing. So what is framing? At the sender side, the data link layer receives the data in the form of packets and convert the packets in the form of frames by adding the source address and then the destination address at the trailer at the end of the frame. So that the function of converting the packets into the frames by adding the source address and destination address is called as framing. So this diagram depicts the functionality of the data link layer. So on the left hand side, figure shows how the data link layer gets the data in the form of packet from the network layer, and the packet will be divided into frame by adding the header and trailer. The header includes the source address and then the trailer includes the destination address. After converting the packet into the frame, the data link layer transmits the frame into the physical layer. The physical layer converts the frame into the raw bits and transmits the raw bits in the form of signals through the transmission medium to the destination. At the destination side, the physical layer receives the electrical signals from the transmission medium and converts them into the raw bits. Now the physical layer transmits the raw bits into the data link layer. Here the data link layer receives the data in the form of raw bits from the physical layer. Again, it converts the raw bits into the frames by adding the header and trailer and transmits the frame to the network layer. So this is the whole functionality of the network, how the data link layer receives the packet from the network layer and convert them into the frames, and how it transmits the frame into the physical layer at the sender side, and at the receiver side how the data link layer receives the data in the form of raw bits and how it converts the raw bits into the frames, and then it transmits the frames to the network layer. The second function of the data link layer is physical addressing. Physical addressing is nothing but specifying or adding the physical address of the sender as well as receiver. That is, it adds the sender address at the header and then the receiver address at the trailer. The third functionality of the data link layer is flow control. So what is flow control? The speed of the sender as well as the receiver should be synchronized. So when the sender sends the data to the receiver should be speed enough to receive the data immediately. If the sender sends the data and if the receiver is making delay to receive the data, then the flow control will not be there. There will be a delay and the packet may be, the frames may be lost, the data may be lost. So data link layer is responsible for making the flow control, making the speed of the sender as well as receiver in a synchronized way. Next function is error control. So this is one of the important functions of the data link layer. So what is error control? When the data is transmitted from the sender to the receiver, there may be the possibility of making the frames to be lost, or the frame may get damaged. Otherwise, there may be the chance of duplicating the frames. So it is the responsibility of the data link layer to detect such error, and then after detecting the error, it is the responsibility of the data link layer to correct it. So that is called as error control. The final task of the data link layer is access control. So what is access control? Suppose more than one devices are connected with the same link, then it is the responsibility of the data link layers protocol to determine the device which should be taking the control over the network to transmit the data. So this is known as the access control. So, for example, here several devices are connected in the network with the address 10, 28, 53, 65, and 87. Suppose then the system with the address 10 wants to transmit the data to the system with the address 87. Then the data link layer should form a frame which includes the data as well as the source address, that is 10, and the destination address 87. So the additional informations apart with the data will be added with the data, which is known as the frame. So let us recollect the functionalities of the data link layer. So the data link layer is responsible for transmitting the data into the frames by adding the source address and then the destination address. So the main task is framing. Second one is the physical addressing, that is the addition of the source address and then the destination address with the data. Flow control is nothing but making the speed of the sender as well as receiver in a synchronized way. Then error control is nothing but controlling the error by detecting the loss of information or duplicate frames and correct it. The final function is access control, which determines which device needs to transmit the data over the network. So next layer is the network layer, which is placed above the data link layer. So what is the main functionality of the data link layer? At the sender side, the data link. What is the main functionality of the network layer? At the sender side, the network layer receives the data from the transport layer and converts the data in the form of packet. Then the packet will be transmitted to the data link layer at the sender side. At the receiver side, the network layer receives the data in the form of frames from the data link layer and convert the frames into the packets. So converting the data into the packet is the main task of the network layer. And it is responsible for source to destination delivery of the packet. So this diagram depicts the functionality of the network layer. So this left side indicates the sender side, right side indicates the receiver side. So at the sender side, the network layer receives the data from the transport layer and converts the data into packets. Then the packet will be transmitted into the data link layer. At the receiver side, the network layer receives the data in the form of frames and convert the frames into the packet. So the main functionalities of the network layers are the logical addressing and then routing. What is logical addressing? Which is nothing but adding the logical address of the source as well as destination instead of the physical address of them. The second main functionality of the network layer is routing. Routing is nothing but determining the correct path for transmitting the data from the source to the destination. So in today's session, we have discussed about the lower three layers, nothing but physical layer, data link layer, and then the network layer. In the next video, let me cover about the transport layer, session layer, presentation layer, and then application layer.